Hey everybody, this is Ryan McClanahan with historythroughcards.com. Hope you're all doing very well today. This video, I want to share with you a really great story of Ray Anthony. And this is a 1959 Dutch gum. And I know that a lot of people hate this series, but sometimes you just have to get a card of whatever you can find of either a player or a famous person, in this case, Ray Anthony. Um, I looked everywhere I could to try to find a card of his, and outside of a 1947 exhibit, I just couldn't find anything else. So I'm very happy with this, and really, there's nothing wrong with these cards. Some of them can actually be quite expensive depending on who's on the card, obviously. But Ray Anthony really doesn't have a whole lot out there. And he is actually the last living member of the Glenn Miller Orchestra. And I really love big band music. I started to listen to a lot of big band music back in the days when I was in high school. And I just never stopped. And that's one of the reasons why I know of the name Ray Anthony today. But again, he's got a really great story, and he's 103 years old. This article is when he turned 100, and it's a great article. I think you guys are going to really enjoy it. And here we go. This is from the Los Angeles Times, January 26th, 2022. Life by the Horns. Legendary band leader Ray Anthony trumpets 100 years by Sean J. O'Connell. It has been over 65 years since more than 1,500 entertainers were selected for immortality on the sidewalks of Hollywood. Only a couple dozen or so of those original inductees are still with us. Among many of his endurance-based accolades, bandleader Ray Anthony is one of the oldest surviving members of that initial class of Hollywood Walk of Fame stars. Actress Marsha Hunt, who would have been a senior to Anthony's freshman, holds the record at 104. On January 20th, Anthony celebrated his 100th birthday surrounded by friends, and Perry Anthony, his lone descendant, a son from his brief marriage to actress Mimi Van Dorn. Anthony's Hollywood Hills property remains as he envisioned it in 1975, complete with lush carpets, a sunken dining room, and a view of the ocean, weather permitting. Amid balloons shaped like the number 100 and the arrival of a pizza adorned with the number inscribed in olives, Anthony remarked that they really wanted to remind me of my age. Although his hearing has diminished considerably, his memory is still sharp. Amid a flurry of well-wishers chiming in by telephone and at the front door, Anthony took time to reflect on his century of stories with a sly sense of self and appreciation for all that he has seen along the way. After his father handed 5-year-old Ray Anthony a trumpet in their Cleveland home, he was hooked on the horn, eventually becoming a teenage disciple of Harry James, the jazz trumpet-playing actor-bandleader who was only a half-dozen years older than him while still a teenager. Anthony found himself thrust into the big time as a member of the Glenn Miller Orchestra, a cocky bass man on a bandstand full of world-weary men. He lasted less than 2 years with the band and was notably fired twice, his strong chops seemingly appealing enough for a second chance but not a third. Some of the musicians teased me for being so young in the number one band, recalled Anthony. He was tough, but it's a business. You don't have much time to do anything but follow the lines. By the end of 1941, the acceleration of the war had disrupted the frivolity of the big band scene, and many musicians offered their talents to the home front. As a result, Anthony found himself in the Navy, entertaining the troops at the Royal Hawaiian Hotel in Honolulu, then still a tense battleground. Anthony emerged from the war with his Hollywood handsome features and the confidence of a veteran showman, spending the next dozen years on televisions and radios across America. His resemblance to Cary Grant was a punchline for both men. The Ray Anthony Orchestra was a prolific ensemble, releasing countless dance singles in the early 1950s, including the Hokey Pokey and the Bunny Hop, swinging trifles that captured a national audience almost immediately. His contributions to the lost art of the boogie, Trumpet Boogie, Mr. Anthony's Boogie, Big Band Boogie, and the Foxtrot, which were often paired with a few dance steps from the enterprising Arthur Murray, were equally successful. Anthony's breaks were melodic and deliberate, but less the result of improvisatory brilliance and more intended to heighten the dance floor frenzy with force rather than filigree. The hours were rigorous and the touring was exhausting. 18 band members and their equipment passing from coast to coast without pause. If I had to go, they had to go, Anthony joked. Perhaps the most legendary of Anthony's exploits was the 1952 release party for his orchestra's swooning single, Marilyn, written for Miss Monroe, who had yet to become a household name. Befitting the glamour of her enjoying profile, Monroe arrived at the party in a Bell helicopter wearing a radiant pink dress that would have been visible hundreds of feet above the crowd long before any of the guests knew who was arriving. Even Anthony wasn't apprised of her planned attendance in response to whether her then-suitor Joe DiMaggio had joined the other high-profile guests such as Mickey Rooney and Sammy Davis Jr. Anthony laughed that he wasn't invited. Those little helicopters could only contain so much personality, and the recently unearthed photos of Monroe and Anthony, trumpet in hand, leave little room for anyone else. Anthony's adoration of spiky-heeled Hollywood blondes was a consistent through line in his public and private life. His tumultuous marriage to famed bombshell Van Doren in 1955 was tabloid fodder for the rest of the decade before things spectacularly imploded. But Anthony's son, Perry, was the positive result of their brief coupling. During the birthday revelry, Perry fondly reminisced about the Beatles albums his father brought home from work. "I wish I still had them now," he remarked wistfully. Towards the middle of the 1950s, Anthony studied with acting teachers Estelle Herman and Sanford Meisner. "I needed to get all the help I could get," Anthony remarked. While acting was never a large focus of his career, he appeared in several notable films, including High School Confidential and the twice Oscar-nominated Daddy Longlegs featuring Fred Astaire, but it was his appearance in the 1956 teenage called Arms, The Girl Can't Help It, that has had the longest impact. In one of the funniest scenes in that movie, Jane Mansfield, in the middle of a recording session, purchases an apple from the vending machine located inside the recording studio and sits down with the Ray Anthony Orchestra as they bounce through Rock Around the Rock Pile. At the close of the tune, Mansfield's character, whose voice has already shattered glass earlier in the film, leans into the microphone for her part as a wailing police siren. The performances by Little Richard and Eddie Cochran spurred impressionable young musicians like Paul McCartney and John Lennon to pursue their rock and roll dreams. but it was Anthony's box office bankability that helped to sell the film to producers. By the start of the swinging 60s, Anthony had already vigorously swung his way through the 1940s and the 1950s. During nearly 20 years with Capitol Records, he recorded hundreds of tracks for the label, whose roster included Frank Sinatra and Nat King Cole when he arrived at the Grand Funk Railroad and the Beach Boys by the time that he left. Anthony continued to perform regularly into his 90s, sometimes leading his own unit, sometimes joining a supergroup of big band veterans. He kept up an 8-decade streak of television appearances as a sort of Barney Rubble to his friend Hugh Hefner's Fred Flintstone on E's The Girls Next Door in the early 2010s, but mostly enjoyed the glow of his unparalleled career as a swinging mid-century American cad, poolside parties above Sunset Boulevard at the Ready. Now 60 plus years after receiving his Hollywood star, Anthony's trumpet still sits by his bedside, a musical relationship that predates the first transatlantic flight and the presidency of Herbert Hoover. He offered no secrets to his longevity, but did note his son's parents have lived for more than a combined 190 years. Van Doren turns 91 on February 6th. It was agreed all around that Perry has inherited some good genes, and by all accounts, Mr. Anthony, still playfully and cheekily, has had a pretty good century. I'll be getting more into some big band cards from the 1930s and 1940s. It's kind of tough to find this stuff, to tell you the truth. A lot tougher than finding sports cards, that's for sure. But I really enjoyed just listening to big band when I was a teenager, and I think it's something I found on my own. I can't quite remember how I actually got into listening to big band. I'm not sure that it was my father who introduced me. I just can't remember. He introduced me to so much music that he just let me go wild with it. And I really did enjoy Glenn Miller's music. I still do. And I try to find as much big band music as I possibly can and try to learn the history of it. And big band is something that you can see the progression of it from the 1920s, the ragtime, and the jazz, and into the 1930s, where Glenn Miller really took a hold of it and turned it into something that was just amazing. And he had his own style. And, in the article there, it did say that Ray Anthony only spent 2 years with Glenn Miller, or maybe like a year and a half. So that would be like 1940, 1941. And he went into the military afterwards. And I do have a postcard set that I'm going to share with you guys in one of my next videos of big band favorites, if you will, from the 1940s. And I think you guys, if you guys do like big band, again, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Ray Anthony, though, again, he really doesn't have a whole lot of cards out there. I didn't see a whole lot. And in fact, there is a few cards from like there's a set from 1936 of big band favorites, I guess, if you will, or orchestra band leaders from 1936. And I do have a few of those, but I'm going to get more into that in other videos. But I thought this would be really interesting. And Ray Anthony, he does have a really interesting song that I really like called Peter Gunn. And that's arranged by the Henry Mancini Orchestra. And Henry Mancini, he does have a card from 1991. I always get Henry Mancini and Guy Lombardo confused for some reason. I know these two guys' names. That you guys are like, who the heck are these guys? And at some point in my early years, I was like, okay, who are these guys? Let me go and try to find out who they are, and then listen to their music and see if I like it or not. And Peter Gunn is a really, really great song. I'm going to leave a link below for you guys to listen to Ray Anthony's stuff as well, because I think you guys might enjoy it if you haven't heard it before. So anyway, guys, that's my look into Ray Anthony. I hope he lives as long as he humanly can or wants to. It's up to the big guy upstairs how long we live, but 103 years is 103 years of stories as far as I'm concerned, and his mind is still sharp. He does sign, at least he did. I'm not sure if he signs now, but he's got a lot of autographs out there, so you can find his autograph fairly cheaply. About $25 to $40 is the going rate, as I've seen on eBay. But you can find his autograph. It's not difficult because he's had 75, 80 years to autograph stuff. But anyway, guys, I'd love to hear what you guys have to say about Ray Anthony. And obviously, Hugh Hefner. It was one of his good friends. And I'll probably do a video on Hugh Hefner as well at some point. And Marilyn Monroe. I do have a card of Marilyn Monroe. I almost kind of forgot about her. But Marilyn is a very interesting figure all on her own, as is Hugh Hefner too. And her cards are just super expensive. I can't believe it. I actually needed a card of Marilyn Monroe's to complete a collection of, or a set of 1955 Barber's tea. And she has a few other cards as well, which are just really, really expensive. Some of these guys and girls, their cards are just non-existent. And again, I don't know every card that's been produced. So when I come across something that I've never seen, I immediately want to share it with other people. So again, guys, thank you so much for stopping by. I greatly appreciate it, as always. And in the next time, I will talk to you later. Have a good one. Bye.